Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to Action Overtime. My name is Nicholas Lamar Souter. I was thinking on how often we've started shows this year with how remarkable things are, and they are once again really extraordinary. As you know, we had a show earlier discussing how Donald Trump tweeted, of all things, that he and his wife had COVID. They were fine. It was a, quote, mild case. That was the description by the um, president's physician. And that was the story. Now, he was taken by a helicopter, Marine One, to Walter Reed. He was taken there, just quote, as a precaution. And so let's talk about what's happened. So he tweeted his initial tweet at 12:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time last night. Actually, it's now that it's past midnight in Eastern. You get the gist of it. Um, Now, while originally we were told there were no symptoms, a senior White House official has now confirmed that, in fact, there were a number of symptoms, that he was fatigued and he was having difficulty breathing. They've also said that he has been described as having fever, chills, congestion, and cough. And a second official at the White House described the situation as, quote, serious. Again, being taken to Walter Reed was described as a just a precautionary measure for what was considered a mild case, but it has now been upgraded by White House advisor Larry Kudlow as, quote, very moderate. It's not only moderate, he does not only have a moderate case of COVID, but he has a very moderate case of COVID. Given the extensive facilities, there's actually quite extensive medical facilities at the White House. It takes a lot to have to move him from the White House, especially because of the image that portrays and the fact that it's, what, 32 days out from the election. It's very rare for a president to actually be hospitalized. Trump has now been hospitalized. There are also now 11 confirmed positive cases of coronavirus traced to the week's presidential debate in Cleveland. At 10:16 p.m., now about 2 hours ago, Kellyanne Conway said she and her entire family had tested positive for COVID-19. Senators Tom Tillis and Utah Senator Mike Lee, members of the Judiciary Committee, who were all at the White House SCOTUS event on Saturday, have also tested positive. Lee said that while he had symptoms at the time, he believed that they were just seasonal allergies, and he did not bother to wear a mask, nor did he social distance. At the very beginning of the event, there were some people wearing masks, and there was some effort to social distance. But if you see photos of the event, all the chairs, everybody is sitting right next to each other. There's no effort whatsoever to social distance, and reports are that by the end of the event, nobody was wearing a mask. Conway is, in fact, now the sixth person who has attended that event and has tested positive. This includes Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, excuse me, Trump aide Hope Hicks, Senate Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee, Republican North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, and University of Notre Dame President Reverend John Jenkins, all confirmed to have COVID-19, and it is believed all of them got it from the SCOTUS announcement on Saturday. The Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, are claiming now that this is prohibitive. You can no longer safely have a judiciary meeting. At least two members of the Judiciary Committee are now sick and cannot come in. And he believes that the hearings on the nominee for the Supreme Court should be postponed. This is one of the possible outcomes that we talked about earlier today. We had on this morning Nate the lawyer, who was very helpful and gave, I thought, some very good insight as to what we could expect having this kind of problem this early on. And we're going to delve into that. This kind of problem, this close to the election. It's quite serious. There is another possibility, of course, which is, as I said before, 11 people now that are associated with the debate in Cleveland have tested positive, 11 people. Biden was at that debate. He has recently had a test. Nobody knows precisely what that means, but ostensibly it sounds like he had one today, and is currently testing negative. Now, depending on the kind of test, none of the tests will tell you immediately when somebody has it. I mean, you don't within 10 seconds of somebody having it, you're not going to get a positive test. Different tests have different time frames at which you can accurately get a positive result. Most of the tests do have some level of false negatives. The most commonly used test actually has, as I recall, unless I've changed tests, it's a 30% false negative. So just because Biden has a negative doesn't mean anything. I shouldn't say it doesn't mean anything. It means the chances are he's genuinely negative, but we don't know. So that covers now. That's 11 people from the debate that have now tested positive, and 7 people from the Rose Garden event nominating judge Amy Coney I think it's Connie Barrett to the Supreme Court. In other social media news, and I think this is going to be something also worth discussing, is how we all feel about this. This is a left-leaning channel. Most of us on here are left-leaning. We've had a few conservatives, but for the most part, we're left-leaning, and most liberals are reasonably united in their genuine dislike, for lack of a better word, hatred, maybe more apropos, of Donald Trump. And I think that's one of the things that got him elected, was the right. The number one qualification was he pisses off the left. So this does put, and we've made it clear in the live chat, and we'll continue to make it clear that he's a human being first. And we talked this morning too about the reality is, if you believe in this great experiment called the United States of America, then you have to support, at a minimum, the office of the presidency. And it's, I think, a difficult thing for the President of the United States to be in the hospital with a very serious illness. I will say that there is a part of me, obviously, I think, and I think this has to be acknowledged. I'm going to acknowledge this, which is there's a part of me that sort of feels like, hey, been flouting the rules for a very long time, and he seems to think that he's above it all, and he's not going to wear a mask, and nobody around him has to wear a mask. And I think almost any other administration, any other Republican or Democratic administration, any of them in the last 100 years would have required masks at the White House. He's now looking at senior members of his own administration. There are some have already tested positive. Others are probably likely to get this. It is now irrefutably in the White House. It is in any members of the Senate that are committees that have frequented the White House. We do know that Pence was last in close proximity to the president on Monday. He has tested negative recently. Again, that could be a false negative, or it could be that he's got the virus and it hasn't progressed enough that any test could detect it. Nobody knows. A negative is a good place to start. And Nancy Pelosi, who is third in the line of succession, is now saying that she is upping her testing regimen. There was a rumor that she had been contacted by the White House. She has not. But she is obviously the third in line for succession. In the Atlantic, a few hours ago, James Hamblin, Dr. James Hamblin, wrote the following. Quote, "The president's prognosis includes the full spectrum of possible outcomes. Many people infected by the coronavirus have no symptoms at all. Today, the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, told reporters that Trump has been showing, quote, mild symptoms akin to those of the common cold. If Trump is indeed symptomatic, that suggests he's been infected for at least 2 days, possibly many more. He could clear the virus and test negative in short order and return to the campaign trail within days. He could have a prolonged hospitalization involving weeks of unconsciousness on a ventilator. during which time Vice President Mike Pence would take charge. The president could also die. He went on to say that while death is not the most likely outcome, it is also far from unlikely. Given his age and previous conditions, based on age and sex alone, he is at high or very high risk for severe disease. 8% of COVID-19 patients in his age range die from the disease. 8% in his age range, and he is at the top of that range. And he's at 74. Starting at 75, that risk category goes up to 18% fatality at 75. So it is a unique and I think difficult time for everybody. I think there are many mixed feelings to people who have, like I have often felt, feel that Trump has been a catastrophe for this government. But he is a human being, and he is one who is right now suffering, and probably, despite the bravado that he likes to display and for whatever reason thinks is necessary in order to function as president, despite all that, is probably starting to be rather scared. Twitter has said that it will suspend the account of anyone who tweets that they hope Trump dies, and the Biden campaign has said they will pull all negative ads from all campaign, from all media in light of his diagnosis. The Trump campaign has notably refused to follow suit. So I'm going to take a minute, and we're going to start to go into the live chat. I wanted to sort of cover. I mean, that's where we stand right now at 12:30. The takeaway, I think, at this point is that Conway and her entire family appears to have it. She's the 6th person who attended the Rose Garden event for the SCOTUS nomination. She's the 6th person to be confirmed. 2 members of the Judiciary Committee, 2 senators, have been confirmed now to have it, and it appears got it from that. And 11 positive cases have been traced to the presidential debate in Cleveland. What was originally described by Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, as a mild case has now been upgraded by White House advisor Larry Kudlow to a moderate case and is being described unofficially by senior White House officials as, quote, serious. He is currently in Walter Reed Medical Hospital, where he has been admitted, we are told, as a precautionary measure. I don't want to be alarmist, but I do remember vividly when Boris Johnson was not only admitted to the hospital, but admitted to ICU as a precautionary measure. It should be noted that Trump was taken by helicopter, not by car. And by car, it was only 5-10 minutes away. The helicopter actually had to come get him, landed on the White House lawn, picked him up, and essentially airlifted him to Walter Reed. So as I said, I've been ignoring the live chat for just a little bit. We thank you all I'd like to thank everyone who showed up. I'd like to thank our mods who are there, and I'd like to thank our supporters and patrons. It's a little bit of a late show, so we're going to catch up here in a second, and then we'll do sort of another rundown. We've been getting every couple of hours there's been new news. My suspicion is at this point everybody who attended either of those 2 events is going to need to aggressively investigate their is going to need to aggressively investigate their COVID status. That means they're going to have to start taking tests. I would probably hate to do it, but test every day for the next week if you attended either one of those events. There seems to be a lot of infection going on. over there. We do have a super chat, by the way, so let me give me 1 second and I will get to that. So thank you very much for the super chat. We are completely community funded, so we sincerely appreciate all of our supporters. And I'll take the note now on this coming Monday. We're going to have our patron hangout. So if you want to become a patron, you can become a patron at any time. Come in, join us for the hangout, talk about the show, the direction of the show. We have some interesting things actually that I wanted to discuss with our patrons. We'll also be discussing it on the Discord. I will be on the Discord after the show, which I anticipate isn't going to go necessarily much longer. We're going to talk a bit about the um, uh, uh, what's going on here, and then I had some thoughts I wanted to run by some people. But at any rate, um, let's yeah. Well, this is okay. So I've seen already. Our super chat $2, Jake 4D. We must wish him a speedy recovery and a decisive loss. Amen. Amen. Well, and to tell you the truth, we've had that discussion. I've had that discussion even with some friends recently who said, I had a friend of mine who said that, someone he knows was saying that she wished he died. And I'm curious about that. Language is a tricky thing. Is she really sitting there going, "I hope he dies," or is it really just sort of an end to, I hope he doesn't get I hope he doesn't get elected, and if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Which, believe it or not, are two different feelings, even if they can be expressed the same way. But at any rate, let me once again, I've got like a couple pages here of chats, and we are also, just in case anybody is interested, if you are watching us on Periscope, you can just hashtag In Time Show or at In Time, and we'll get a copy of that up here, and so I can take a look at it. But like I said, I'm gonna take a minute. Yeah, I guess Fox News is saying that somehow this is the Dems' fault, which I'm sure. And Zandering has his usual this gallows humor. Okay. Yeah, I don't know the status of Kellyanne Conway. She said she was all right, but it's her whole family has it, and we've seen, you know, families are interesting. Children do tend to be somewhat more resilient, but we've seen families where it unfortunately takes the uh, it for some reason, and I don't think anyone's figured this out quite why yet. Sometimes it just kills the children, and nobody knows why. Young kids. This is a really, yeah. We started it on time, and we started with my microphone on. Two very concerning signs for people. So let's see. So this is interesting. Maya is saying that Kellyanne's daughter was pissed. Apparently, she lied to the family and said she tested negative. Um, I hadn't heard that. Uh, okay, if the president passes away, Pence becomes president, but who becomes the nominee? Okay, yeah. I'm going to have to look up. I'm going to have to. This is from memory here, but if I remember correctly, so here's what we're looking at. It depends very much on how and when it happens. Because there's been so. Oh wow. I actually don't know if he passes away before the election, and we've had some discussion on this, and I haven't gotten somebody who knows the answer. If he passes away after the election, if he's won, it's not difficult. What ends up happening is Pence becomes the president, and then he gets to nominate a vice president. The vice president has to be confirmed by Congress, if I recall, and if they're confirmed by Congress, then you're done. Uh, on the ticket. I don't know. I heard somebody say that basically what happens is he can't win and he's disqualified. I'm not sure that's correct. I do know that that spot on the ticket belongs to the party, but the party's already locked in the candidate and they've locked in the VP. My assumption has been that if Trump dies and then before the election and he wins the election after that, my assumption has been that it continues as if, it's just you have elected a man for president who is no longer fit for office, so the order of succession applies. So it just ends up being Pence, and then if Pence, now we had this question earlier, what happens, the third in the line of succession is Speaker of the House, that would be Nancy Pelosi. Question was, does Nancy Pelosi become vice president? The answer is no, she stays Speaker of the House. However, she becomes president if Mike Pence gets it. So, and again, both Mike Pence and Joe Biden are now considered to have come into contact with someone who's exposed. Coming into contact doesn't mean you're going to get it. You have to actually, of course, have it. You have to actually get it, and then either if you don't wash your hands or anything like that, and then you can actually get the infection. But they've come into contact with somebody who's exposed. So it is possible. It's always possible that Biden could get it. I mean, that's always been a possibility. But now it seems to be a genuine possibility. Again, 11 people at this point from the debates. And I don't know who, but I assume some of it's going to be the advanced team. It looks like it's all administrative. It's all people who are setting it up have now tested positive. So yeah. All right, then let me just see if, and then like I said, I'll be joining the Discord. I think I'm probably going to do another rundown in a minute, and then we'll see where we stand. Really, this is updating. We were told early on. Here's the other thing that's important. I think this is one of the takeaways from tonight's update that I think is important. We were told initially that he had no symptoms, and what this meant was that he could go as far as a week without getting any symptoms. And he might never get them, but he could also, I mean, he could even end up extraordinary in life-threatening condition, but still not get symptoms for a week if he didn't have any. Now it turns out he wasn't tested as a precaution because Hope Hicks was positive. Hope Hicks was positive, ostensibly got it at the event. She was at that event. There was, and we said earlier, it was I think of the senator from, I want to say, North Carolina, who was positive but thought it was seasonal allergies, and so he didn't wear a mask and didn't take precautions. Nonetheless, how and where it spread through that event, I think people are going to take some time to figure it out. But Hope Hicks tested positive, so she's now being quarantined. The official story was he was going to quarantine until he gets a negative test. So yesterday morning, he said, I'm going to quarantine. My family's going to quarantine, just because somebody that we were in the proximity of. He then tested positive. We were told he had no symptoms. Then I remember it shortly thereafter it became, well, he had a mild fever, a low-grade fever, which would be any fever that's, I think 100, I think it's 101 or lower. So he had a low-grade fever is what we were told. And now it turns out that by the time he was taken to Walter Reed, he was having difficulty breathing, and his fever, he had just a regular fever, chills, congestion, cough, and all the symptoms of a lower chest infection. So yeah, Tills is positive. So give me one more minute because whenever I start to get dings all over the all right, so what I may do is we may bring a guest in here in a minute just to hash it out with us for a few minutes. I don't want to take too long because I think that's all I think we've covered most of it. So let me all right. So I'm gonna prepare to get a guest in here just for a minute. He's been a regular, is Andring. In fact, he's in the chat now. I'm gonna send him a DM with a link, and he should be able to get that in. So, Xander, you'll be getting a link in a DM on Discord in just a minute. And then what I'm going to do is while we prepare to have him come in, I will do a rundown once again from the top. If you if you like the show, we come here and we try to collate all of this information. And when there's been riots, we get streams right off the interwebs. So we hope you will, at a minimum, like and subscribe. It's a great way to support the channel. And if you want to do super chats too, that's just a huge help. But please, at a minimum, like and subscribe. That helps us out. I'm gonna see if I can get a Xandering in here. Like I say, he's one of the few conservatives who's, actually makes sense. It's a little scary. I don't trust that instinct. So let me make sure that we've got what we need to get him in here. I think we do. All right, so Xandering should have that link. I'm going to, yeah, he's good. All right, so the short of this, as I said before, is at this point a number of people now have been confirmed to be infected, both from the debates and from the SCOTUS nomination party, and we are trying to sort of sort out who is sick and where it came from. But the big news is Donald Trump, who earlier was just quarantining as a safety measure, was later diagnosed positive for COVID. He then claimed that, or everybody claimed, that it was a mild case and that there were no symptoms. We have since discovered that indeed there have been symptoms, including fever, difficulty breathing, and a number of other issues. And then, okay, let's see. I think he should. Let me see if we've got him here. Xander, you there? All right. I heard. Sounded like he was getting in, so we'll give that another shot, and then I'm going to finish that rundown. Koesa for 5001. Don't want him to die, but I hope he gets sick enough to finally realize what he's done to 200,000 American lives. Am I terrible for thinking that? No, you're human. If Trump came out and said, "I've been a horrible president," and I am. And by the way, he is using, when he says 200,000 American lives, he's using Koesa there is using an interesting method for calculating the figures. I think it's the correct one. Let's see. I think. Let's see here. If Xandering's using the iPhone, we've been having troubles connecting with an iPhone. You got to. I think you can't use Chrome. You have to use Safari on the iPhone. I don't know. I was trying to connect, but he's having issues. So there, the New Yorker. No, actually, I think it was Atlantic. Decided to try a different way to calculate the deaths from COVID. Here's the problem, which is the only COVID deaths that count are the ones that are tested. But what that means is you either have to be tested while you're really sick, and then you have to die basically directly as a result of COVID, or you have to be tested after you're dead. And they don't test everybody after they're dead. And a lot of times, a COVID death can look like a death from some other disease, diabetes, renal failure, whatever. So there are all of these diseases which can be mistaken for COVID, and it also doesn't take into account if you want to understand whether or not this has been mismanaged, one of the things that you need to do is you need to figure out not just the primary deaths from COVID, but the secondary deaths from COVID. What happens when a hospital is completely overwhelmed and they can't help somebody with a heart attack because they're too busy dealing with the COVID deaths? Now, that heart attack victim, if he dies, he didn't die from COVID, but he did die from the pandemic. He died from the pandemic because the pandemic paralyzed the system enough that a condition that otherwise would not have been fatal killed him. So the question is, as a result of the mismanagement of this, how many people have actually died from the pandemic? And with I think again it was the Atlantic magazine. What they did was they compared how many people died over time for the last 10 years or whatever in each state at any given time, and they calculated what the average was, and then they calculated what the difference was between the average from past years and this year. Just the difference in the number of the mortality rate from those two blocks, previous years and this year. And what they found was that as COVID moved from one area to another, to an area, to another, to another. The deaths went from the average, skyrocketed up. And that's a pretty good indicator that it is, in fact, COVID, and that these are COVID related. And keep in mind, in some cases, you should actually see the deaths going down. Why? We have about 35,000 people die every year on highways in this country. But with everybody on lockdown, all of a sudden the highway deaths drop. The highways have never been safer because nobody's driving anywhere. So you end up with a oh, he's trying to get in, so let me give him one more shot here. I'm going to try one more different. Let's just see. So, if the highways are safer and there's other conditions which presumably make life a little safer for people, then even this number of mortality rates is going to be low. But that number had us surpassing 200,000 deaths last month. So Mr. Coessa, who gave us a super chat, thank you very much for that super chat, and said that Trump was responsible for those deaths. We have 4% of the world's population and 20% of the world's COVID deaths. This is an industrialized country. This is supposed to be the most powerful country in the world. It's the most powerful country in the world, and we have more COVID deaths than any other country per capita. But here's the thing. If it's irrefutably Trump's fault. I'm sorry, anybody who disagrees with me on that is wrong. It's not negotiable. It is Trump's fault. He has mismanaged it. He has mitigated it. He has said it isn't as bad as it really is, and he's done so exclusively for political reasons. It's his fault. But if he ended up saying he was sorry, and if he ended up getting really, really sick, barely recovering, and saying, I've seen the light, and I was wrong, and I'm so sorry, that kind of catharsis isn't going to bring anybody back. And I've found I dream of that all the time. I dream of the people I hate having to eat crow, and it never makes me feel better. It does for a little bit, but it's a short period of time because it doesn't bring anybody back. It doesn't change anything. It changes the one person. Maybe they're different going forward. That's a good thing. So to answer because I don't answer anything short, to answer your question, Koisa, no, it doesn't mean you're not human. Sorry, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're human. I still try to avoid those kinds of thoughts because it's been my experience, and this is just my experience, that doesn't make me feel better. What would make me feel better? He loses the White House, goes out, and goes down in history as one of the worst presidents in our history. Did massive damage to our to our alliances with other countries, to NATO. Completely stripped us of our respect worldwide. All the time talking about. And yeah, he boosted the economy. That's a big yay. You know how he did it? With $2 trillion plus stimulus packages. A monkey can stimulate the economy with those kinds of packages. I'm not impressed. So I do apologize. It looks like Isandering is having a hard time coming in. I don't know why. We did test this earlier today. In fact, it was okay because we had some difficulties with our last guest. We had to bring him in on NDI. But I do apologize. I wanted to have Isandering in here, so we'll get you back for another show, Isandering. But I'm glad that you were at least available and up for it. So let's talk about. Yeah, it barely affects anyone, Trump said on 9/22. And Trump also said that basically the tide had turned on this. So we had on Nate the lawyer earlier today. And one of the things that he said, and I think this is true, this just is devastating to his campaign because he doesn't want to talk COVID because it's been a complete failure. He wants to talk about the economy, which is going to tank because at some point you can't maintain this. You can't just keep pumping money into it. You can't print money. You can, but inflation is going to become an issue. So there's going to be a rebound on the economy, and Biden's going to get stuck with it, and then they're going to blame the Dems again. That's okay, as long as Trump's out of office. But I think, Nate had mentioned that, and actually we had Nate on this morning, and it worked. I'm gonna blame the Republicans. Isandering can't come in because it's the Yeah, it was the futures went down on the market, but they seem to rebound right now. Futures are down in the U.S. They're actually mixed across the world, but in the U.S. futures are down, not by a huge amount, but we'll see. It's going to be a few days. So, like I said, I want to do one more rundown, then I think we're probably going to wrap it up here. Uh, yeah, down about 2%. Okay, that sounds about right. It's doing weird things to your, yeah, that's his. Sanders blaming the Democrats again. I'm a Democrat. I'm sure he thinks it's my fault. Um, yeah. Well, is the stock market an indicator of how people are doing? We've had that discussion. It's an interesting indicator. Yeah, I suspect you're right. It's none of that. So, what do we have right now? The conditions inside the White House has been described as a burgeoning crisis. Why? Well, the president obviously has COVID, and so he was originally going to self-isolate and stay at home, which for him is the White House right now, and everything was going to be fine. The White House has incredible medical facilities there, but at some point it was decided that as a quote precaution, they would take him to Walter Reed and admit him there just as a precaution. What we learned later was that this case, originally described as a mild case of COVID with no symptoms, was absolutely not that. It was confirmed that he actually had a fever, chills, congestion, and a cough, and his condition was actually described by a senior White House official as, quote, serious. Another senior White House official also confirmed that he was fatigued and, quote, having difficulty breathing. His condition has now been described by White House advisor Larry Kudlow as moderate. He actually said, quote, very moderate. That's a Trumpism. I have no idea what the hell very moderate means. I really don't. We now have 11 confirmed positive cases of coronavirus that stemmed from this week's presidential debate in Cleveland. And we have 9. Senator Tom Tillis hold on a second. Actually, let me get to that in a second. So we have no, I'm sorry, we have 6 people who attended the last week's event for the nomination of Trump's SCOTUS pick, who have now tested positive. This includes Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, top Trump aide Hope Hicks, Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee, Republican North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, and the University of Notre Dame President Reverend John Jenkins. Now, Lee was interesting because when he attended, it appears now he was in fact sick when he attended. He didn't get it from it. It looks like he was sick. He had symptoms, but he attributed those symptoms to seasonal allergies and chose not to wear a mask and not social distance. Jake 4D. Jake, thank you once again for your just generous and consistent contributions. We really appreciate it. When you say he boosted the economy, you mean the stock market? I don't think lower class or middle class, maybe it's shrinking middle, just the other. Well, here's the problem, which is he wants to create jobs. And right now, there aren't a lot of jobs. The stimulus package went largely to big businesses, and it was to stimulate the economy. Maybe it was to keep the economy from crashing. Really, it was a lifeline for that and for the stock market. I don't think the stock market's necessarily a good barometer for what's actually happening in the economy, and we've seen that time and time and time again. But it is a good barometer for what people feel is happening, and that's important. That's very important. One of my concerns has been that once the stimulus money runs out, and once the effects of that run out, you have to realize this is unprecedented, what's happening in the stock market. The stock market prices are continuing to go up despite the fact all of the objective evidence is that we are in at least another Great Depression. Why is the stock market still going up? Why? For lack of a better word, because this administration and the U.S. Congress has been essentially bribing corporations to keep running, keep the jobs up and going, so that the economy stays afloat. That's why. Now, because this kind of thing always backfires, always, period. It's the free hand of the market. You can't put your hand, you can't put the full weight of a gorilla, 900-pound gorilla, on one side of that scale and not have it balance out at some point somewhere else down the line. You can't do that. So they're doing it, and I'm going to be cynical here, just to get elected. And then they're figuring they'll deal with the consequences of this later. But you can't just pump money into the economy because that money has to come from somewhere. So, and if you could pump money into the economy that way, we'd always have a good economy. My concern is once the stock market goes down, let me rephrase that. I think the reason there hasn't been a huge panic in the streets about COVID, people have been worried, but there hasn't been a panic, and there hasn't been the panic that I expected. And I think one reason there hasn't been is because the stock market has been up. Even on Main Street, they judge the health of the economy by Wall Street to some extent. They're aware that it's not necessarily them, but as long as Wall Street's doing good, they're not panicking. They may be upset. They may say, hey, Wall Street's taking all the money and Main Street's dilapidated and we're getting left out of it, but they're not panicking. If Wall Street collapses, that's when I think they panic. That's when I think they say, okay, there's a real problem in this country. So I think this artificial inflation has actually been a problem in people accurately assessing what's the reality of what's going on in this country. So that can't go on forever. The next president's going to get blamed for the rebound, and there's going to be, I think, a pretty serious economic rebound. Nonetheless, about all Trump is credited with right now is he's helped the economy. I think it's fake. I think it's smoke and mirrors. And I think if you take a look at his businesses, and we're going to have to do a deep dive at some point on, especially on his college, because his university was crazy. But if I think it's smoke and mirrors. I don't think he's really done it, but that's about all he gets credit for. And he wants to talk about the economy. He wants to talk about the economy. He's got COVID now. He can't talk about the economy because all anyone wants to know is, well, gee, how did you get COVID if we're around the corner on this thing? So, two senators, Tom Tillis and Mike Lee, have it. They are both on the Judiciary Committee. That's why they were there. So the Judiciary Committee appears to have received somewhat of a blow. Kellyanne Conway's entire family has it. Hicks has it. Trump and the First Lady have it. And since Trump doesn't wear a mask, and since we now know he's had it for a while, because he's got symptoms, we know he's got it for a while. And he's been going around without a mask. Remember, the mask, we talk about it sometimes as if it's to protect you. It's not. It's to protect other people. He's been going around without a mask. I think there's a reason there's a crisis going on right now in the White House. So what we appear to have at this point is numerous infections. We have numerous infections from two events. The debate I'd have thought would have been handled properly, and we wouldn't see many, if any, infections from that. But the Rose Garden event, they were all sitting right next to each other, and nobody was wearing a mask. So I think we are now at the beginning of what is going to be a pretty serious hit to the upper echelons of the White House. It's clear that Trump has had this for a while. If he had no symptoms, maybe he's had it for a couple of days. But he's got symptoms. So he's had it for a couple of days. That means Pence has been exposed. Whether he's got it or not, nobody knows. He's tested negative, but he's been exposed. Biden may or may not have been exposed. He's at least been in the vicinity of people who were exposed and at an event where it has now featured prominently. So I think, oh, there he is. Right at the end of the show, too. How are you?
Oh my God. I had to use my tablet. Can you hear me?
I can. What kind of phone were you on? Just out of curiosity, I'm trying to figure out which phones seem to have the difficulty connecting, so we can inform guests.
It was a Samsung Galaxy S10, and it worked the last time. It's the same phone that I was on with last time, but for some reason I clicked on the link, clicked join vMix. As soon as it opened up, it would kick me off of the internet. The internet would go out, it'd gray out, and then it'd pop back on for a few seconds, go out, and it'd flash on and off a few times. I had YouTube running, and it would disconnect me from the stream and tell me I didn't have internet, and then it'd do that 3 or 4 times, and then internet would come back up, YouTube would come back up, but apparently it didn't work for vMix. It showed that I
All
was
right.
in, but it didn't.
All right. Well,
Apparently wasn't working on him.
I think we're going to try to wrap this up in about 5, maybe 10 minutes. So, but what are your thoughts now on this? I mean, it's a lot to digest, and it looks now. So, like I said, in there are 2 age brackets. He is at the top of the second worst bracket. The mortality rate there is 8%, and he is not in good condition already as it is. So it's just 8% across the board in his age bracket, which goes up to 74 years old. He starting at 75, you move into an age bracket where the mortality rate is 18%. So I mean, those are difficult numbers, I think, at this point. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are this year is just keeps getting more and more interesting. I mean, this close to an election, and suddenly you have a presidential candidate and the sitting president that has a serious or has been uh, tested positive for a fairly serious, especially at his age and with his medical history and conditions, a very serious virus. And it throws a lot of things up in the air. Then you have the Judiciary Committee members that have also tested positive, which, yeah, it makes the whole thing is now one giant mess. And at least we get to live during interesting times.
Yeah, well, it is funny. I always lament when it's boring. I always lament the interesting times. I say, oh, it's just so boring. I wish something would happen. Then shit like this happens. I was like, I really wish it was boring. And it's grass is always greener. Boris Johnson was 56 years old, and he got sick enough that it appears he didn't think he was going to make it. A number of other people didn't think he was going to make it. And they were planning on enacting succession protocols, which they had to invent because they hadn't actually prepared for this contingency. So he made it. He was okay, but he was 56 years old, and that is sort of Boris Johnson and Trump are they're the closest. They both sort of live similar lifestyles and have similar approaches, and they're both, yeah. So now Trump is 74. He has heart disease. He is actually technically obese. And yeah, any one of those factors could be an issue. There are some people who think that he may be starting to have early onset dementia. I personally, you know what? Yeah, I really think nobody should engage on that kind of online speculation. But I totally think he's got it. I,
Well, that's
I
okay. I think Joe Biden's got dementia too. So
yeah, actually, well, he is definitely showing some signs. Um, But oh yeah, the Mayan calendar was slightly misread. Yes, whoever wrote the Mayan calendar was dyslexic, and it was not 2012 that was the end of the world, but 2021. So, all right. So
yeah.
do you have
Well,
any
what?
other do you have any other
That
thoughts?
was
I mean, you're a conservative, but you don't seem to be a huge Trump fan. So I mean, what are your thoughts?
no. I'm not. I didn't vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him this time. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. Well, I think more or less Joe Biden's kind of innocuous and he kind of goes with the flow. I've seen him reverse his positions on so many different things, but I really think that he just kind of goes with whatever the party happens to be going with at the time. I don't like Kamala Harris at all. So I can't vote for either of them. I would have been willing if I'd have been in a state where it was a battleground state where Trump might have won. I have no idea where the camera is on my thing, so I'm sorry. I'm staring off into space somewhere.
Yeah, I was
I've
okay.
never used my tablet before. I had to pull my tablet out and actually install Discord and run this through my tablet. So anyway, so if I would have voted for him the first time, just because it was something different and he wasn't a politician, he was ostensibly a businessman. I'm not entirely sure that that's such a great qualification anymore, because I firmly believe that a lot of the things Trump has tried to do uh, is reflective of him being in a CEO position and just going, well, why can't I just do this? It's the limitations placed on him seem to be really chafing. He doesn't seem to really understand how the government actually functions. So I would have given him a shot the first time. Based on his record, I would not vote for him again. But again, this time I'll be voting for the Libertarian candidate, Joe Jorgensen. So because I can't go vote for Biden, because I'm not entirely convinced of Biden's soundness, and I don't know how long he's actually going to be competent to actually make decisions. And I think it's going to end up falling more to Kamala Harris, and I don't like Kamala Harris. So, but we'll see what's going to happen. I'm wondering what's going to happen with with the judiciary nominations now. How that's going to play out.
Well,
Whether Trump's going to be in to do anything before the election. I mean, I don't want him to die of this. I mean, all the counts is that this is a horrible way to die. But I know several people, a lot of people, who are cheering at the news and genuinely hope that he dies from this. And I'm not sure if it's that, it's the only way that they can guarantee that he is no longer president, or if they certainly just hate him that much. I know a lot of people that just viscerally hate the guy, and I'm not sure why.
I
I mean,
don't.
I don't think he's been such a huge disaster, but I don't think he's been great either. There's a
I'm
lot of
not.
things he's done that. Go ahead.
Well, no, I am leaning on the huge disaster side of things. But you heard my rant. So I did a rant on Trump. I should link it, or I did a profanity laced rant on Trump once when he was running. It was before he won. But I said in it, and I said this before. I don't hatred is a very there's a Buddhist saying, hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I that's been my experience of it. And that doesn't mean I don't sometimes feel it, and especially if I feel really aggrieved, I start to feel it. But it does nothing but, it's really bad for you. And I don't hate Trump, and I do feel bad when people do hate him. I don't think you should, but I think he's yeah, I think he's done a lot of damage. I think what it is I think it's this notion of vindication and justice, especially as a guy who has. It's what I said before. When the guy who sits there and says, "Oh well, I can break all the rules and I can do whatever I like," and he goes and he breaks all the rules, and then all of a sudden he gets the consequences. He's like, "Hey, hey, hey, motherfucker!" It's just which is a boy do I get that instinct, but that's not particularly helpful either. And the joy from that doesn't last very long. Um,
Well, I do think, though. I mean, I know a lot of people thought he's been, an unmitigated disaster, and I don't think he's done a great job. I think he's screwed a lot of things up. I think he's gone back on a lot of the promises he's made. Um, I mean, if you make promises on the campaign trail and you get elected to the office, you should, make good on those promises, because those promises are part of what got you there, or at least ostensibly, those promises are part of what got you there. When he was first running, he was pretty, he claimed to be pretty pro Second Amendment. And then pretty much any kind of Second Amendment thing that came up, he didn't move on at all, and even flopped backwards and started spouting anti Second Amendment stuff, subject near and dear to my heart. Uh, he said he was going to build a wall, and while they've made some progress on a wall, there isn't a huge, big, long wall. Some people think that's great. I mean, I don't think that building a wall would be particularly useful. I think there's better ways of dealing with it, but he did promise to do it, and he didn't fulfill that either. And then starting trade wars with other countries, not seeming to not understand that, tariffs hurt the American people more than they hurt the people that are importing or
yes.
exporting it to us.
Oh
So,
dear.
there's just it's like for somebody who's supposed to be a business person, he doesn't really seem to understand how the economy actually works. So yeah, I don't think that he's done a great job at all. But on the positive side, I do think that this is a pretty good example of how resilient our system of government actually is. Because let's say Biden and Harris get elected, they can undo a lot of the damage that he's done. So, it's a pretty robust, and he hasn't been able to do a lot of the things that he really wanted to do, just wave his hand and do them. And some of the things that he tried to skirt around, he got such pushback on that it was like that kind of at least stopped. So,
Uh,
it's been a hell of an interesting political year, uh, events year. I don't think people are going to forget 2020 for a while.
Jesus, yeah. All right, so we have someone very special in the live chat right now, and I just had to say it. We have Neil, the 604 Titan. No, that's not right. Never mind. Titan 604. I'm not even going to say his name. He'll do whatever. Neil, thank you for coming. And I I love Neil. I did the deconversion. I was on his show for deconversion. He's been a guest of the show, and it was spectacular. And Titan did drop the link to my rant. It was a performance piece. Take it with a grain of salt. A lot of people never have the same view of me after they've heard that rant, but it was, and I was upset. I was upset. I was a little triggered for that rant, but that's on
Hey,
on
you're
my.
you're more than welcome to hate the guy, or rant against him. There's a lot of things he's done that even as I I hesitate to call myself a conservative, because I'm socially extremely liberal. But when it comes to things like government policy, what the role of government is, fiscal policy, foreign policy, I'm very conservative in those areas. And so I identify more as a libertarian. In the last two elections, I voted for libertarian. Well, this one and the last one, I voted libertarian. I did vote for Barack Obama. So you take that as you like.
All right. Well, I really
I mean,
appreciate you coming.
I voted
Yep.
for him the first time in 2008.
I really do appreciate you coming on. And so, what I'd like to do is just do one more quick rundown, just so everybody knows, and then if you have any last words, and then we'll end it here. So, what we have is what was described as no symptoms, and Donald Trump testing positive for COVID, which he released last night at 12:54 a.m. Eastern Standard. Said he and his wife tested positive. They were fine, and they were asymptomatic. Since then, we've learned that what was described as a mild case was actually now officially described by the White House, by White House advisor Larry Kudlow, as very moderate, whatever that means. But he has now been moved to Walter Reed Medical Hospital, and another one White House advisor described the situation as serious. Another one confirmed that he had been fatigued and having difficulty breathing. We also know that he, in fact, did have symptoms, including fever, chills, congestion, and cough, and other signs of a lower respiratory infection. We know that about 3 hours ago now, Kellyanne Conway said that she and her entire family have now tested positive for COVID-19. She is the sixth person who attended last week's SCOTUS nominating event at the Rose Garden who has tested positive. This includes Donald Trump, Melania Trump, Hope Hicks, Republicans, Utah Senator Mike Lee, North Carolina Senator Thomas Tills, and University of Notre Dame President John Jenkins. They've all confirmed COVID-19. They were all at the event where there was no masks and no social distancing. Let's see. There now appears to be. This was the nominating. This was the nominating announcement for Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Two of the people who are sick are senators on the Judiciary Committee, and it now looks like they're going to try to leverage this to say we cannot hold the hearings on time. It was going to be very tight to try to get this done by the election, and now this has to be imperiling Trump's ability to actually. Trump can no longer stump for her. He can't stump for his own campaign. Just last week, he said they were around the corner on this, and he now has it. We have had a doctor who said that he is at the very high end of um, in his category, there is about an 8% mortality rate for COVID. If he were 1 year older, he would be in the 18% mortality rate for COVID. And that's for everybody across the board based solely on age. That's not including other morbidity factors, and he's got a number of them, including his weight, his diet, and he has high cholesterol despite it being treated with Lipitor. So, and then we have 11 people. Most of them, it looks like Trump's advance team and the setup team for the debate on the debate. 11 people from the Cleveland, Ohio debate have now tested positive. So I think we're going to start to see it go pretty quickly through the White House. That's what I'm seeing here. We now know that he's had it for a while, probably at least a week. He was in the close contact with Mike Pence on Monday. That's the last time he had contact with Mike Pence. So, three questions that I see. One, how serious is this going to get for Trump? It looks like it's got the potential to get quite serious. It looks like it is now on its way in that direction. Second question, is Pence going to get it? And if so, how serious is it going to be for him? Third question, is Biden going to get it? And how serious is it going to be for him? So I think, whew, that's a lot. So any parting words before we go?
May you live in interesting times.
Yeah, you're aware that was a curse, right? Not a blessing.
Oh no, come on! It's a well-known Chinese proverb.
It's not a proverb. It's a well-known Chinese curse. Oh dear Lord. Okay,
No,
I don't even know why we
I
bring you on. I have no idea what we're just
I don't know why you bring me on either.
desperate, I guess. Okay,
I mean, I'm the wacky, crazy person. Although somebody did say something in the live chat, if I could respond to it really quick,
please,
so I
please.
don't have to try and type on my phone. I
Yeah,
will
please.
read what it said. It was from Random Nobody, an apt name, I guess. Socially liberal and financially conservative usually means that you want to virtue signal about social issues but don't want to pay for it. I don't want the government paying for a lot of things. I don't want the government paying, federal government. I should qualify this by saying when I talk about the government, I'm generally speaking of the federal government. I don't want the federal government paying for this. I don't want federal welfare programs. I want the federal government to drastically slash the amount of money that it's spending. I want it to drastically reduce the amount it's spending on defense, the amount it interferes in the rest of the world. And I'd like it to leave the rest of the world more or less alone unless there's a clear and present danger to the United States itself or our allies. When I say I'm socially liberal, is I believe you should be able to live your life the way you want to live your life, and you have the freedom to do so. I don't care how you want to live your life; it's your life. Live it just the way you want to. I don't think anybody should be belittling you. I don't think that they should be trying to take away any of your rights. Everybody should have the freedom to access the same amount of rights, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of lifestyle you live, no matter what your race, religion, creed. I personally would rather see religion go kind of by the wayside. I don't see a lot of evidence for it. But it's your life and you can live it the way you want. Just don't impose your views on me. As long
And
as I'm not,
and we've had
violating
this
your right.
discussion before too. You're not against welfare by any stretch of the imagination. You just think it should be done at the state level so that states can deal with with their own problems in their way instead of a one size fits all problem by the federal government. Is that roughly, at least if a state wants welfare, but it
Correct.
should be a state. So you're not against welfare in any way. You're against the federal government doing it instead of letting the states handle their own business. I think is your position. Is that roughly?
Yeah. Yes, it is. I don't think that the federal government's in a good position to try and manage a welfare program. You know, it doesn't really see the masses that it's handing money out to. There's no accountability at a federal level to what the money's actually being used for. The best policy is always to have uh, the government as close to the people as possible. That and the fewer laws that you deal with on a federal level, if I mean, at least on my state level, I have a chance of getting an appointment with the governor of my state, even more so the county commissioner, and I can certainly get an interview almost anytime I want to with my city mayor. Of course, the town I live in is very small, so that's very easy. Something like Seattle would probably be a little bit more difficult to get a meeting with the mayor, but and the people that are actually distributing and dealing with the people that are needing these welfare programs uh, live in those communities and are best able to deal with and know what's going on. I mean, I don't believe that there's a huge amount of like widespread fraud, at least intentional fraud, but I do see, at least in my community, I can see a lot of people that have kind of stopped trying because they have access to these programs. I don't think they're bad people, and I don't think they're setting out to just defraud the government. But I don't think that just handing them money in these programs is actually doing them any good as people. So I want to keep the welfare system as local as possible, and the state can decide if it wants to spend a lot of money on it, social programs or not. I don't like the federal government doing it, and I don't see anywhere in the Constitution that allows them to redistribute wealth in that way.
All right, so
But they do a whole bunch of things that I think are horribly inefficient, especially when it comes to taxation.
all right, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to address one question, and I think we'll call it a night. We'll probably end up doing a news update. I think this is going to be a news cycle for a while. But there was a very good question here. We've got it up on the screen. I think it's Eva asked, what happens if he dies before the election? All right, here's what happens. Roughly, to the best of my understanding, and I'm about 85 to 90% sure on this, but it's one I haven't studied in a while. But my understanding is as this. So, first of all, you have to understand nobody here has, for the most part, and some smarmy person, there's probably going to be one person listening to this who's actually voted for president. But for the most part, nobody listening to me has ever voted for president. What you've done is you've gone into a voting booth, you voted for a name that's going to be president, and so on and so forth. That ballot goes to the governor. The governor certifies, the governor of your state certifies, okay, X person won the election or Y person won the election. And then they distribute the electoral college delegates to the parties based on who won. They don't distribute them to the candidates. They distribute them to the parties, who then assign them to however they want. So they'll say, okay, we know you're going to vote the way we want you to. You're going to vote the way we want you to. They put them into the seats. They send them off to vote. They vote for the person. There you go. But you did not vote for the president. You just cast a ballot that gets counted at the end as weighing more or less. And the governor can actually send anybody he wants in most states. Some states actually have a law, but most states do not regulate, do not require the governor to honor the election. The governor could, and this is something that the Trump, we reported on this a short while ago, the Trump campaign has a plan to, if he loses, to go to the governors of battleground states and say, you know what, Trump really should have won. You know he should have won. You're loyal to us. Give all of your delegates to the Republican Party. They can do that. They may get lynched. They may never be able to run again, but they can do that. So if the delegates actually go to the party, if a nominee either is incapacitated, withdraws, or dies before the election, his name is still on the ballot. And what's going to end up happening is those delegates will still be assigned to the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party can replace the candidate with anybody they want to at any time. For the Republicans, they need to have a committee vote, and whoever they vote for by a simple majority, that person will replace whichever candidate, either the VP slot or the presidential slot, on the ballot. It doesn't matter who you voted for. It already on some level doesn't actually matter. It's just sort of the honor system is what we have now. There are people who are contemplating constitutional amendments or just saying that every state must honor the popular vote. Those would be good laws that would essentially remove the Electoral College, which we can't remove right now because you'd have to have a constitutional amendment to remove it. So the end run is just require all states to honor the popular vote, and then the Electoral College is functionally gone. But that same Electoral College business that allows a person who loses the popular vote to get into the White House means that if it actually means technically, to the best of my understanding, they can replace him anytime they want to. If they wanted to, because it's the Republican Party that gets the delegates, it's not Trump, it's the Republican Party. If the party decides to replace him, they can replace him after the vote. The closest you can say you're voting for is for a party. And even then, you're not really doing it because the governor can just, it's the governor who makes the call. So I don't think this succession is just for POTUS, not for VP. There is a succession for the VP. There's a succession. I don't know how long. Do you know how many what the number is in the constitutional succession? I want to say like 28. Well, actually, it changes because it goes through the whole cabinet. I don't know, but there's succession goes a very a long way. So doesn't this situation give more value to the Electoral College? Not necessarily, because you could still give the votes to the party, but you could just require it to be along the lines of the popular vote. So you'd end up almost with the best of both worlds. You'd still have but the problem is, right now, anybody, you can have faithless electors. You could have 20 people who are supposed to vote one way decide to vote another way and completely override what we as citizens have voted for. So I think I'm not a fan of the Electoral College system. I think it's a very poor system. I think most other democracies look at us and laugh their asses off, because in how many countries can you really have the popular vote and the other guy still wins? And that's happened here too many times. So all right, we will. I'm going to go into Discord. Is Andrew, are you going to be in the Discord?
Sure, I can do that.
Sure. All right. Well,
then you can come yell at me how screwed up you think my views are.
Oh God, his views aren't screwed. Listen, the only person who gets to call his views screwed up is me, and I take a great deal of pleasure in it, and I don't get to do it enough. So don't anybody take that out of my. That's
Three times a day isn't enough.
Every chance I get. All right, folks. Thank you all for joining us. If you've gone this far in the show, please hit like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. It's a great way to help. I will be in the Discord. We dropped a link. We also dropped a link to my Trump rant if anybody wants to see that. And we're going to stay on it. It looks. I mean, right now the indication is he's significantly worse than we thought. He's not in terrible shape, but he's not in very good shape either. And it looks like it's heading worse. He's heading south. So we're going to keep an eye on it. Best of luck to everyone. He's also not the only one who's contracted COVID in the last 24 hours. So there's a lot of people out there, and please, everyone, try to stay safe. Thank you all very much.